Yes, sir.
ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ವಿದ್ಯಾಶಂಕರ್ ಅವರೇ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಬೋದಾ?
ಖಂಡಿತ. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.
ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ಮತ್ತು ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಈ ಒಂದು ವಿಶೇಷ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಸಂದರ್ಭ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಮ ಪೂರ್ವ ಪ್ರಧಾನಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳಾದ ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಶ್ರೀ ಅಟಲ್ ಬಿಹಾರಿ ವಾಜಪೇಯಿ ಅವರ ಜನ್ಮದಿನ ಡಿಸೆಂಬರ್ 25. ಅದರ ಪ್ರಯುಕ್ತ 2014ರಿಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು ಸುಶಾಸನ ದಿವಸ ಅಂತ ಆಚರಿಸಲಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಈ ವರ್ಷ ಇಡೀ ಡಿಸೆಂಬರ್ ಮಾಸವನ್ನು ಸುಶಾಸನ ಮಾಸ ಅಂತ ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಮತ್ತು ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಘೋಷಣೆ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಈ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ಮತ್ತು ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ಮತ್ತು ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಒಂದು ಅಂಗ ವಿಶೇಷ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳನ್ನ ಹಮ್ಮಿಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ತಜ್ಞರಿಂದ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಅಂತ. ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿನ 2 ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಗಳಿವೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಇಬ್ಬರು ತಜ್ಞರು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈಗ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಮೊದಲಿನ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಸನ್ಮಾನ್ಯ ಶ್ರೀ MN ವಿದ್ಯಾಶಂಕರ್, IAS, retired, former additional chief secretary to government of Karnataka and in various positions that he held in the government. So he is our special guest this morning. On behalf of all of us, we would like to thank and welcome Shri MN Vidyashankar ji to this special lecture, special talk session. Very briefly, for the introduction, Shri MN Vidyashankar needs no introduction in the state of Karnataka. He is so very well known. For the sake of for the newcomers, along with me today, we have Shri A.M. Ramesh, CEO of the Academy, Shri Dr. Anand, Senior Scientific Officer, Dr. Umesh Gatke, Scientific Officer, Dr. Srinivas, Scientific Officer, several others. Also in the audience, we are joined by several civilians and scientists, technologists. And also I'd like to mention that this is also on the YouTube. So several of our viewers will be on the YouTube. Shri MN Vidyashankar ji, educated in Delhi throughout from schooling to post-graduation. He has an MA degree in economics and MPhil from the Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi. Further, he has a postgraduate degree in business administration from Harvard University in the United States of America. Shri Vidyashankar ji joined the Indian Administrative Service in the year 1982 and served in various capacities in different departments of the state government. To be again very brief, he was the chairman of the Bangalore Water Supply and Sewerage Board during 2000 to 2004 and commissioner of the BDA during 2004 to 2006. He also worked as the chief electoral officer during 2008 to 2009 and principal secretary of the Department of Information Technology, Biotechnology, Science and Technology, Government of Karnataka till July 2012. We are proud to say that this is one organization Shri Vidyashankar ji steered, and we are grateful to you, sir, that we are here because of your several efforts at that time. Subsequently, Shri Vidyashankar ji was also the additional chief secretary to the government, Department of Commerce and Industries, Government of Karnataka. He also served as the president of the Indian Electronics and Semiconductor Association. His major areas of interest include downsizing, right sizing, re-engineering, e-governance, and customer relationship management. So you can see the kind of canvas that Shri Vidyashankar has worked on. He is recognized with several national, international awards and recognitions. One of them is world's best mentor by Technology Business Incubators for his efforts in promoting technology and technology-based solutions that transformed human lives and societies. So through administration, through good administration, Shri Vidyashankar ji has touched crores of lives in the state and in the country. And we could not have had a better person than our chief guest this morning, Shri MN Vidyashankar, for this talk on good governance. ಸುಶಾಸನ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಅವರಿಗಿಂತ ಅನುಭವಸ್ಥರು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅವರಿಂದ ತಜ್ಞರು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಕಂಡುಹಿಡಿಯಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮ ಪರಿಚಯ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಶ್ರೀ MN ವಿದ್ಯಾಶಂಕರ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಮತ್ತು ಕೋರಿಕೆ. ಇವರ we have a special talk on good governance, your views, your opinions, your suggestions as way forward that we should be following as we go along. With these words, once again, sir, welcome and request you to be with us and present your talk. Thank you.
Namaskara. Sarvarigu namaskara. I deem it a privilege to be a part of the good governance session, and as very aptly described by Professor Ayyappan, I think I deem it a privilege to be a part of this session. What I'm going to do is that I have a PowerPoint presentation. I will share it with you. Basically, it's divided into 7 different sections. I must, before I start, I must thank Mr. Ramesh, who has made headlines for his very efficient administration, for his very efficient dealing in some of the departments. And Professor Ayyappan, of course, is a national figure, having retired as Director General of Indian Council for Agricultural Research. He is the person in demand practically in every sphere of the economy. Currently, he holds the directorship of NABL. I'm equally thrilled that Professor Gopal Naik, Professor, Indian Institute of Management, is also a part of this event. Now that shows, the kind of ecosystem that KSTA has built under the team headed by Professor Ayyappan and Mr. Ramesh and the team. So with these few words, I thought I'll just start a very brief presentation. See, good governance is a very vast topic. Normally, the kind of issues that I'm covering today, as a part of the teaching exercise, I used to have it over 7 lecture sessions, but I'll try to be as brief as possible and also take your inputs, which will be an education for me, which will be a learning for me in case there are any comments, questions, etc. So with these few words, I'll just share my presentation. So once, very good morning to everyone. I hope the screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thanks very much. So the title I'm going to cover is Concepts and Applications in Good Governance. Again, many thanks to KSTA, its chairman, Professor Ayyappan, and Mr. Ramesh. As I said, the flow is going to be over 7 different sessions. One is covering the emergence of good governance as a line of policy, concepts in good governance. What are the actionable strategies that we need to adopt to have good governance in the focus? How do we engage with the government? What has been the governance record? And how do we learn from each other insofar as the best practices are concerned? And some of the experiments which Karnataka has pioneered at the state level, and it has now become a role model in the rest of the country. And lastly, I'll also very briefly dwell with security and cyber security related issues. I think everyone has heard of good governance as a concept, but as a matter of policy in the government and as a matter of discussions in different forums, it started with World Bank's declaration that there was a crisis of governance with a litany of development problems. This was in 1989. Since then, good governance has become almost a mantra. It has now become a catch-all phrase or anything related to governance and governance related issues. Now, why is it that governance has taken the front page or the top of the mind recall in all issues when we deal with governance? Is because there is ample empirical evidence to show that good governance, better governance promotes economic development in a very big way. Secondly, again, another very important issue as to why we focus on good governance is that government is the largest service provider and the least automated insofar as the last mile of service delivery is concerned. So in addition to government being the largest provider, it's very important that governance reaches the last man in the queue, the last mile of service delivery.
Sir, it appears you are muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, okay, sir.
Now, how can the government maintain quality and integrity of its services, very wide range of services for its citizens, starting from the poorest to the top of the pyramid, is what is going to be discussed in the good governance discussion. Now, first coming to the concepts in good governance, there is no unanimity insofar as the concept is concerned. In fact, I'm going to share with you 4 different concepts, one developed by the World Bank, one developed by the United Nations, one of them propagated by the Asian Development Bank, and finally by the African Development Bank. Now, when we talk of good governance, it is G to G, government to government. It is government to consumer, client, government to business, and government to enterprises. And government is basically an instrument of governance in all countries in the world across the globe. There is no exception whatsoever. Now, when we talk of good governance, it refers to governing systems which are capable, which are responsive, which is inclusive and transparent. This is a definition with only 3 parameters highlighted by the United Nations. Now, coming to the World Bank, it's a combination of transparent and accountable institutions, strong skills, and complete and fundamental willingness to do the right thing. So insofar as the World Bank is concerned, the definition is slightly wider and covers many more aspects than United Nations. Now, coming to the African Development Bank, basically they talk of processes, a process of referring to the manner in which power is exercised in the management and affairs of the nation and its relations with other nations. So it basically talks of how does government manage its powers within the nation and in its relations with other nations. Now, this is the Asian Development Bank, the manner in which the power is exercised in the management of the country's economic and social resources for development. Again, it's almost a 30,000 feet level definition insofar as, Asian Development Bank is concerned. Now, having defined what good governance is, as we have seen from the definitions of different agencies, both at the global level and at levels in Asia, how do we achieve good governance, and what are the actionable strategies that we need to focus on? Now, I think, as we all know, we need to turn a crisis into an opportunity. And the best way of doing is that we have a very lean, very transparent, with focus on tackling operational issues. It's very important that we keep in focus these 3 issues, primarily because, I'll give some examples which will prove each one of these 3 characteristics which I mentioned. Now, good governance does not mean that we should be content, we should be fully satisfied, staying out of trouble. If there is no trouble, that doesn't mean good governance, number one. And then second, it's very important that we make it very clear. It's not what we tell the people, it's not what we tell the citizens, but what is it that the people hear and what is it that they experience. It is more important to focus on what people hear and what people experience. And thirdly, which is again a very important yardstick of good governance, we need to seek change even before it is needed. Otherwise, what will happen is the demand will outstrip supply, and we'll come back to the same position where a majority of the people or a majority of citizens are extremely unhappy with the kind of dispensation that we are rolling out. So we need to ensure that the supply side is always ahead of the demand. Another very important concept that we need to be very clear is e-government is something different from e-governance. Now, when we talk of e-government, it is only a one-way flow or a one-way process. It is a government which has the authority to come out with legislations, with regulations, with rules, with acts, and so on. So e-government refers to a one-way process where the government makes policy decisions. There is no interaction whatsoever. Whereas in e-governance is a two-way process where people give a feedback to the government on what is required, how the dispensation should be improved, how is it that the dispensation reaches the last person in the queue, how is it that we reach the bottom of the pyramid. So e-government is a one-way flow, e-governance is a two-way flow. And again, governance includes not just government, though government is a principal player, but it also includes, if you want to have the concept of good governance in its full bloom, we need the public sector, we need the private sector, the civil society, and the non-governmental organizations, or as we call non-profits. Now, all these three sectors have to work hand in hand, they have to work in tandem in the process of governance. Again, to achieve good governance, it is absolutely important that we focus on 4 T's. They are normally referred to as 4 T's. One is transaction automation, because without automation, there is no way we can address the concerns of the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Second, we need tracking. This is a very important component of any governance related issue. Traceability and transparency. So transaction tracking, traceability, and transparency are the 4 pillars that we need to ensure while developing any kind of strategy to implement good governance. Again, the people should have the confidence of making use of the services doled out by the government. It should be anytime, 24/7. It should be anywhere, and it should be any device. It should not be device specific. It can't be that I can access only on my laptop, my desktop, my handheld, or my iPads, iPhones, and whatsoever. So it has to be anytime, anywhere, any device. Now, let's look at what are the fundamentals of good governance. One is participation. As I said, the difference between government and governance is that in governance, we have participation from the people. We have the rule of law. We ensure transparency. We have equity and inclusiveness, effectiveness and efficiency, accountability, consensus, and responsiveness. Now, here I would just like to take a couple of minutes on the fundamentals of governance. There is a lot of dichotomy with regard to the components of or the fundamentals of good governance. There are some schools of thought which say that in addition to these 8 fundamentals which have been highlighted on the screen, we must also include human rights. Number one, we must, as I said, there is no unanimity whatsoever whether human rights should be a part of, the good governance strategy for implementing all the principles of good governance. So there are some people who say that human rights should be a part of it. Now, there's another school of thought which says democracy should be a part of the fundamentals of good governance. Now, why I'm saying this is that we know of examples in the world where we have phenomenal economic growth without focus on human rights without focus on democracy. There are many countries in the world which are doing very well economically, which have achieved most of the principles of good governance without human rights and without democracy. So I'm just trying to highlight that there is no unanimity with regard to the fundamentals. Some people want even these two pillars to be included as a part of good governance. So having said that, we will focus on these 8 issues which have been highlighted. Now, these 8 issues of good governance, they need to be a part of policy making, they need to be a part of decision making, they need to be a part of implementation, and they need to be a part of monitoring too. So it is not that these 8 fundamentals have to be only at policy making or only at monitoring level. They have to be a part of each one of these 4 important pillars. Now, looking at the governance landscape, it is very important for us to ensure that we have data consolidation and data harmonization. When I say data consolidation, harmonization, I think I will be coming with slightly more details in the subsequent slides. Normally governments across the world, across the globe, the departments and ministries, they work in silos. I do not share my data, my information as liberally, as willingly as it should be. So data consolidation, harmonization is very, very important. Anyway, as I said, I'll slightly cover more of this in the subsequent slides. Second, meaningful decisions always drive innovations in governance. They always improve the outcomes of governance in case we are in a position to ensure data consolidation and harmonization. So it is not just digital modernization. There is no point in having the latest of laptops, the latest of data centers and latest of techniques in machine learning, AI, blockchain, whatsoever. We need digital transformation. See, unless we have digital transformation, mere digital modernization is not going to give us the kind of results that we want as a part of good governance. So it's absolutely essential that we break the silos, data silos and department silos to ensure that we reach the last mile of delivery. Now, having said that, how do we engage with the government? One of the most important principles of governance is that there is participation, there is inclusiveness, there is equity. Now, how do we engage with the government? How does a common citizen engage with the government? Now, there are very many ways. I'm just highlighting some of them because of paucity of time, because my time is up to 12, and I also need to take questions because, as I said, I believe in an interaction than in a monologue. So scrutiny is a very important lever for driving improvement. Without scrutiny, as I said, we will be failing in our good governance activities in a very big way. So scrutiny at each level, at each one of the 4 levels which I mentioned earlier on, has to be ensured to drive improvement and to ensure that we live up to the expectations of people. So one is the role of citizens in ensuring transparency and accountability. This can be achieved through NGOs, this can be achieved through non-profits, and there are certain other ways also which I'm going to deal with. One is the right to information. If you have seen this morning's newspapers, at least some of them which I had an occasion to read, just mull over, in Belagavi and Kalburgi divisions in North Karnataka, as of date, if I remember, it is about 31,000 cases which are pending under the right to information. Appeals are pending in only in Kalburgi and this thing. Of course, there are certain time limits for disposal, and the commissioners also ensure that they are disposed of. So right to information is one of the very important levers of ensuring that we live up to the principles of good governance. Second is Lokayukta. I think we all know what is the role that Lokayukta plays. In Karnataka, it is Lokayukta. In some states, it is called Lokpal, whereas in other states, they are called as the third eye, and so on and so forth. But, Lokayukta, again, is a very important institution to ensure that we have the principles of good governance put in full practice. Third is e-governance. I don't know how many of you know that Karnataka is the only state in the country of all the 28 states which has a department of e-governance. it's very important because, normally governance has been assigned to either the administrative department. In some states, it is a part of the finance department. In some states, it is a part of, the personnel department, and so on and so forth. See, unless we have a focused approach to good governance, it's very, very difficult to achieve good governance in its true spirit. Fourthly, we have a citizens charter. In fact, most of the government's machinery will have a citizens charter. What are the rights that citizens have? What are the responsibilities that the concerned government department or ministry will dole out? So citizens charter again is a very important component of ensuring, or very important levers of scrutiny to ensure that we live up to the last mile governance, which is a requirement. Very importantly, we need capacity building because, unless we have capacity building both at the government level and at the citizen level, it will be very difficult for us to ensure good governance, which can be achieved through training. In fact, we have got so many schemes both at the federal level and at the state level to improve the skill level of people that capacity building assumes a large amount of importance in ensuring good governance. Now, let's see, having seen what good governance means, what are the fundamentals of good governance, and what are the important components of ensuring good governance, what is the record? Have we achieved all the requirements of good governance at the field level? Now, what I will do is, I will first cover good governance at the global level. I will cover some at the Asian level, and I'll cover some at the national level. And finally, I'll cover a little bit on what is happening at the state level. But it's very important that we learn from each other because, unless we are in a position, because there is no point in reinventing the wheel, as we all know. We need to ensure that we learn from each other, especially the kind of best practices which have been put in position across the globe. Now, there's something called Public Affairs Index. The latest report is available for 2021. Indian states with the highest scores of good governance: Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Maharashtra. And all these 5 states have scored above the national average on all dimensions of good governance. Now, the World Bank's good governance indicators, the top 5 Asian countries, I think we all know the record of all these 5 countries: Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. And all these countries have scored above the world average in each one of the 6 dimensions of good governance as laid out by World Bank, which is political stability and absence of violence, government effectiveness, regulatory quality, rule of law, control of corruption, and accountability. So these 6 states are well above the world average in each one of these 6 dimensions. Now, the average score of good governance in Asia, covering all the countries in Asia, is slightly below the world average. Now, you take the World Bank's governance indicators, the 6 indicators which I just mentioned. Now, Indian record is that we are above the world average in political stability, absence of violence, regulatory control, rule of law, and control of corruption. We are above the world average in each of these parameters. This is something where I will devote some more time. Estonia is a country in Europe with borders with Finland and Sweden. They are ranked as a top digital government by the biennial EGovernment survey of 2022. This is the most recent survey, is just about 2 months old. They have very well linked up both private and public sector information systems. Estonia is the most e-governed state in the country, in the whole world. Immediately after birth, until the last day of life, every parameter that a citizen or a client requires is digital. There is absolutely no face-to-face interaction with the government. Every interaction is at the digital level. Now, as I said, one of the very important components of good governance is that it does not refer to only government interaction. It also refers to interaction with the public system, with the public and private system. So it links up both private and public sector information system. So you can imagine, you are in a position to get any kind of service, whether be it in the state sector, be it in the private sector, in Estonia, without any human interface. I would urge each one of the viewers, please go through this Estonia's public services app. It's called Bureaucrat. It is the world's first public service AI-based virtual assistant. And you know, the aim of Estonian government is to have an invisible government. But look at the motto of it. Nobody has come out with this kind of a slogan saying that we want to be number one in the world, number one, and number two, we want to be absolutely invisible insofar as the citizens are concerned. But giving them all the services that they require, sitting at home and being in a position to access all the services, be it private, be it public, irrespective of the device that they have. So please go through it. You know, it's a wonderful piece of information with a host of details as to how they have achieved this concept of invisible government in this public services app called Bureaucrat. In fact, you can use any browser and access Bureaucrat. Now, this report, table which you are seeing on the screen, it is just about some weeks old, maybe a couple of weeks old. It is compiled by the United Nations. Look at the figures. Most of these countries, there are only 5 countries which are, I have only taken, the sample of some countries. There are 5 countries in Asia, and most of the countries are in North America and Europe. Look at Denmark. Name of the countries in the first column. Next column is online service index. That means how many services are rendered online and how many services people have to access through a face-to-face interaction. That's the difference between online and offline services. So when it comes to an online service index, Denmark is at 0.97. As I said, Finland is at 0.98. And look at Estonia. It is 100%. There is no other country in the world which has 100% online services, be it in the state sector, be it in the private sector. And I have given the source also. This is 2022 United Nations EGovernment survey, and released just about a couple of weeks ago, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It amply proves the kind of work done by government of Estonia. The capital of Estonia is a city called Tallinn, Tallinn. Amazing things done for citizen services. It is something, as I said, when it comes to good governance, we need to learn by experience, number one, and we need to learn from each other. It's worth visiting Estonia and seeing how is it that they are in a position to roll out. See, one of the counter arguments could be that Estonia is a very small country. True. But no harm in trying to emulate what they have done with regard to rolling out services. It is, again, when they score 100% on the index, that means it is right from the top of the pyramid right up to the bottom of the pyramid. So it's worth emulating Estonia in very many ways and trying to replicate some of the exercises and replicate some of the very important steps they have taken in reaching the last mile of delivery. Now, this again, United Nations report was with respect to countries. Now, this Lee Kuan Yew World City, Vienna has been a winner of biennial Lee Kuan Yew World City project 2020. It has been termed as the most innovative approach to build citizen-centric sustainable cities. So, and Vienna has won it many times, but the last Lee Kuan Yew Award has also gone to Vienna, among the most livable cities in the world, according to very many international organizations which have listed the most livable cities. So real-time data flows between agencies, as I mentioned, and applications have shown to be very, very critical for powering smart cities, for improving security and detecting fraud very quickly. And all these 3 things is what Vienna has achieved in a very big way. So as I said, we need to learn global and apply local. It is not that what has been done elsewhere can be just transplanted here, but we need to make the required modifications. We need to leverage it in such a way that it is applicable at the local level. Now, I'll just come to the Karnataka experiment. Karnataka has been a pioneer state in good governance. It has occupied the top position in the country for, I think, more than 10 years, to the best of my knowledge. And I'll just highlight some of the initiatives. There are more than 35 initiatives which government of Karnataka has, come out with. And just highlighting some of them. We were the first state in the country to have free right of way for laying OFC cables. Until some time ago, we had the largest and the longest OFC cable network in the country until very recently. We were the first state in the country to start IT finishing schools. Sakala, as you know, there are time limits prescribed and penalties for exceeding the time limits for delivery of services. Then we have Bangalore One, which caters to the services of many departments under one umbrella. Here again, there are penalties if a person goes to a Bangalore One center, is not in a position to get the services of all the departments that he or she looks forward to. And there is a delay beyond the threshold limit fixed by the government, by the Department of E-Governance. There are penalties on the service provider. And Bhumi, as you all know, the first exercise in the country to digitize the land details, as we call the RTCs, record of rights, tenancy, and crops. Even today, it continues to be the most major initiative of any state in the country to digitize the land titles. We were again among the first state in the country to initiate a paperless office. In fact, the Department of E-Governance itself was the first office in the country to have a paperless regime. Again, just for the information of all the esteemed viewers, Department of E-Governance is the smallest department in the country today. It has, I think, about, when I was there, we had only 4 permanent employees. Many of the services were outsourced. So with 4 permanent government employees, it was the smallest department, not only in the state, but in the country. So we initiated a paperless regime where everything was approved outside of the physical paper. Then we have something called EGovernment. This is for, it's something which is doing great service even now. Any entrepreneur who wants to make any kind of investment in the country has to only go to the EGovernment portal, fill up all the details, and then ensure that his or her project is cleared by either the single window agency or by the state high-level coordination committee headed by the Honorable Chief Minister. In the rural area, we had customer service centers. We initially called as Nemmadi. It also rolls out a number of services, a host of services in the rural area. Then we were the first state in the country and the first Department of E-Governance in the country to have a data center of its own. We had the Karnataka State Wide Area Network, which is now into currently the second phase is under implementation. Then we had Karnataka One, just like Bangalore One, we had Karnataka One, where most of the services which Bangalore One gave, identical services or similar services, were rolled out in different parts of different districts in the state. We were the first state in the country to roll out an e-procurement portal. We rolled out this portal in the late 2008, 2009. In fact, Government of India came out with e-market portal only about 5-6 years ago. So we were pioneers even in e-procurement portal. Now, just to tell you the importance of the e-procurement portal, government is the largest procurer of goods, services, and products, not only in India, but across all the 198 countries in the world. Government is the largest procurer. So having said that, in the first 5 years of implementation of e-procurement in Karnataka state, we could achieve savings of close to 10,000 crores annually in procurement of goods and services. So you can imagine, if the budget is 1 lakh crore, on day one before implementation of e-procurement portal. After implementation of portal in the first 5 years, we had saved, I mean, the government of Karnataka had saved close to 10,000 crores in its procurement pricing. So that itself shows the kind of power of e-procurement portal. Here again, some states in the country do not fully subscribe to e-procurement. They call it as e-tendering, which is not e-procurement. E-tendering is only where they publish the tender on the portal, but the procurement process is manual. That is something which is now being discouraged by everybody because, it does not have the kind of transparency required. And again, to give you some very positive notes on e-procurement, because, a lot of public money is involved. That's why I'm trying to focus a little more on this issue. Before e-procurement portal was introduced, 95 to 96% of the tenders were from contractors, suppliers within the state. So we had just about a single digit figure of procuring parties coming, contractors and service providers coming from outside the state. After e-procurement came into position, the number of suppliers, the number of contractors supplying for tenders issued on e-procurement portal increased from a single digit figure to almost 20%. So much so, there are organizations which have said that I used to procure, XYZ commodity from within the country. Today, I'm in a position to procure the same material at, say, 75% of the cost or 80% of the cost, procuring goods and services from countries in Asia, from countries in in countries in North America. So we are now getting offers from practically across the globe for the tenders floated, primarily because people have confidence, saying that the entire tender process is now fully digitized, as a result of which it is sheer merit, it is sheer L1 T1, as we call it, as the lowest financial offer and the lowest technical offer. Both are matched before we procure any good or any service. So because of the confidence built up by the suppliers, we are now in a position to get the best of prices, not only best of prices or the lowest of prices within the country, but across the globe. Similarly, we have Vision Group, which are headed by literally a who's who in the space to advise. For example, Professor Kstacademy, who was director of IIITB until a year ago, he was chairman of the Vision Group on e-governance. And, being a person of the stature of Professor Kstacademy, he could come out with some of the best of suggestions for implementation. In fact, the data center, the case one, all these projects were implemented when he was chairman of the Vision Group. We have Vision Group for IT, we have Vision Group for e-governance, we have Vision Group on biotechnology, we have Vision Group on science and technology, as Professor Ayyappan very well knows. So these Vision Groups also help us in advising on the best of breed solutions to achieve good governance. Similarly, stamps and registration offices fully digitized now. The transport department digitized. I think everyone knows the kind of benefits that we are getting because of digitization in each of these departments. This is one issue which is now bothering us, because despite the best of e-governance system that we deploy, we are finding it difficult to ensure that we maintain the sanctity, we maintain the probity required in our database because of the threat that we are facing on the cybersecurity front. Security and cyber maturity, looking at the number of cyber attacks which are steadily rising in the country. Now, 2018, we saw 2 lakh plus. 19, it became close to 4 lakhs. 2020, it came to 11.5 lakhs. 2021, 14. And until 30th November 2022, we had 12.7 lakhs. In fact, I got this figure from a question answered in the parliament in Lok Sabha just about a week ago. This is the figure quoted. So I just thought I'll take the same figure. And look at the number of complaints officially filed between 2019 and 2022, more than 6 lakh cyber complaints have been filed with concerned police stations, cyber police stations. So 6 lakh complaints filed. These are the number of cyber attacks, but officially what has been filed in the police stations is about 6 lakhs. Of course, all these are dealt with by an organization called CERT-IN, Cybersecurity Emergency Response Team in Government of India. These figures are from, extracted from CERT-IN. And, even these figures will be an underestimate, primarily because, how many cases go unreported. We know of the recent attack, which we saw in All India Institute of Medical Sciences. So many data records, stolen by stolen by, elements specializing in cyber threats and ransomware. So this is something which is going to take a lot of our attention in the days, in the months and years to come, unless we are in a position to fully address the cyber threat and enhance our cyber maturity. It will be very, very difficult for us to remain or to continue to remain at the top of the league table in good governance and e-governance. We know of instances where data is stolen from the banks, data is stolen from social media sites, data is stolen from, so on and so forth. And, this is something which requires a lot of attention. Looking at the cyber maturity status of the country, I'm talking of only one country. I'm talking of only, I won't say one country. You take North America. The total number of vacancies for cybersecurity personnel, professionals, in North America alone, we have a vacancy level of about 2.8 lakhs. 2,80,000 is a vacancy level for professionals, and they are not in a position to fill up because we don't have the required manpower to address issues on cybersecurity. So thanks once again. As I said, I've tried to squeeze a lot of issues, primarily because of paucity of time, but I would be too happy to take questions, too happy to take suggestions from the esteemed audience.
Thank you very much, sir, for this lecture that brought out so lucidly the differences, subtle differences between e-governance and e-government, and several things that you mentioned, from the good practices to latest trends all over the world. It was an amazing talk that that enlightened us so much about good governance. Thank you very much. We have also been joined by Dr. Gopal Naik, another esteemed speaker, the esteemed member of the KSTA, Professor S.K. Saidapur, Dr. N.K.S. Gowda Fellowship, among many others who have joined the talk this time. We would like to thank Dr. Shri M.N. Vidyashankarji. And then, as he said, if there are any comments, suggestions, questions from our audience, you are welcome now. Thank you very much. Open to audience, please. Any comments? Mr. Saidapur?
Well, it was a nice talk. I greatly enjoyed listening to the various ideas on good governance and all that. I don't have a question, but I just want to share my concern. There's one thing. Are we looking at stakeholder satisfaction about the governance? That is one thing we need to worry about also. Apart from all these surveys and other things and ranking, everything is fine. But how much our stakeholders are happy, or what is their perception about the governance? I think this is something we need to now move to this aspect also. Because suppose I go and stand on a street, ask the first 100 people whom I meet, they represent from all sections of the society, and I ask them, how do you feel? How good is this governance and all that? What would they say? I think we should look into that also. Because our claiming what all things we have done is not enough. What people ultimately say is, I think, is also to be added to this parameters of good governance. So this is what I would like to say.
Thank you very much, Saidapur Avare.
Uh,
ನಾನು presentation ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೆ, when we talk of good governance, the difference is not what we say, but what we hear from the people and what we experience.
Correct.
Acha, ಎರಡನೇದು, I don't know if many of you have heard of two very important names in seeing who have played a very important role in trying to capture the pulse of the people. One Mr. Ramesh Ramanathan anta idru. He's still there. He's doing a lot of work on getting the people's pulse. ಎರಡನೇದು Dr. Samuel Paul ಅಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಪಬ್ಲಿಕ್ ಅಫೇರ್ಸ್ ಸೆಂಟರ್ ಅಂತ ಇದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಈಗ Mr. G. Gurucharan, who also happens to be a batchmate, he is a director. They come out with a government report card and prati varsha they tell us from a very wide survey across the spectrum of the society, how many people are happy, how many people are unhappy at different levels, and what is the kind of improvement that that particular department has to do. And this is an yearly report. In fact, I have seen Mr. Gurucharan's latest report on the agencies which directly deal with citizen services. They are very exhaustive. How many people are unhappy? How many are unhappy? Why is it that they are unhappy? And what is it that should be done to make them happy? What is it that needs to be done to ensure that we address their concerns? So there are a lot of instrumentalities currently in position which try to assess the pulse of the people with regard to the functioning of the governance as such. Of course, it is not a survey which covers everybody, but it's a very good representative sample covering all sections of society. In fact, I can share with you the latest report of the Public Affairs Center on the performance of different departments and citizen-oriented services in Karnataka state. But a very well, articulated comment. Thank you very much, Saidapur Avare.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other comments from our esteemed colleagues? Any other comments? Okay, so thank you very much. I would like to, as I said, immensely thank Sri M. N. Vidyashankar ji, the lifetime experience that he carries with him in administration across the departments in the government, and now a global exposure that he is with several committees globally. And as you said, sir, if we can get to that invisible government, but that visible services. Now, as the Honorable Prime Minister keeps talking of minimum government, maximum governance, several of those elements that you brought out before us. And thanks to you for those principles and possible practices for this country and for the state, and your vision from global to national to state level, that has made this talk a very elegant one. And we are grateful from the Karnataka Science and Technology Academy. May I request that you may continue for the next 1 hour? Is it possible, sir, for the another talk? Or if you are busy, we would like to have a formal vote of thanks at this time.
I'm waiting for to listen to Professor Naik, because he's a powerhouse and storehouse of information with regard to governance. So I'm very eagerly waiting. But just a final thought, under the chairmanship of Mr. Nandan Nilekani, we had this Aadhaar system which came into position. Even here, in fact, I didn't have time to cover Aadhaar. Tumkur and Mysore districts in Karnataka state, they were the first 2 districts in India to cover near 100% coverage of Aadhaar. Aadhaar has today become the basis for practically everything, whether it is a mobile phone or you want to get an election card, or whatever. It has now become the basis for delivery of services and very many other dispensations which the government is coming out with. So here again, it has played a very major role in good governance. Just thought I'll flag this issue because, as I said, I didn't have time. Since it is 11:54, I thought I'll flag this issue. But I'm waiting to hear to Professor Gopal Naik.
Thank you very much, sir. We greatly appreciate if you can be with us till the end of this talk. And
yes, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here till the end. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. So in which case, with your kind permission and with everyone's, we would like to move on to the next talk, the second talk, and the last, actually, in this in this series in today's expert talk session. ನಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ ಇನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಆದ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ನಾಯಕ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಹಾರ್ದಿಕ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಮತ್ತೆ ಕೃತಜ್ಞತೆಗಳು. ಈ ಒಂದು ಕೋರಿಕೆಯನ್ನ ಒಪ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ, ಸುಶಾಸನದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ. ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ನಾಯಕ್, again to be very brief in introduction, Professor Gopal Nayak would speak on good degree with a PhD in agricultural marketing and econometrics from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign in 1987. Professor Nayak ಅವರು ಸುಮಾರು 100ಕ್ಕೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಪ್ರಕಟಣೆಗಳು, over 100 publications in agricultural economics, and a distinguished academic career combined with several national and international consulting. Our areas of interest: public policy, public service delivery, policies on agriculture and rural development, performance of agricultural markets, asymmetric information market performance, technology adoption, agribusiness development, food safety, agribusiness commodity markets, and forecasting. He has initially, as a student also, he got the PhD dissertation award, Dr. Desai Award for best paper in agricultural economics, gold medal from the US Bangalore. In 2007, the American Agricultural Economics Association presented him with the award for professional excellence in agricultural economics, meritorious paper award from the International Conference on Theory and Practice of Electronic Governance in 2010. As I mentioned, Professor Nayak has been working in the areas of public policy, forecasting, marketing research, future markets, commodity markets, WTO, irrigation, and forest management. Currently, he is engaged with ICT in agriculture and rural development, a point that Shri M.N. Vidya Shankarji also mentioned with regard to new tools in administration and management. And he has, as I said, over 5 books, number of chapters in books, and number of research articles in global publications. And he is consultant to several international organizations, be it the World Bank, WHO, FAO, and the national organizations like Silk Board, Spices Board, and several agencies here. We are both with the central and the state governments. Led by Dr. Nayak, the IIMB, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore's Center for Public Policy, has developed a tele-education project called Satellite and Advanced Multimedia Interaction Education SAMI to address problem of poor quality education in rural government aided primary schools in Karnataka. Today, the tele-education project is reaching more than 2 lakh school children in 1,000 schools in rural. ನಮ್ಮ ಹಿಂದುಳಿದ ಪ್ರದೇಶ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಇಡೀ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಸುಮಾರು 1000ಕ್ಕೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಶಾಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ 2 ಲಕ್ಷ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳು ಇದರ ಲಾಭ ಪಡಿತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ಸಮಿಟ್ ಆನ್ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಪಾಲಿಸಿ 2015 ಅವಾರ್ಡ್ ಕೂಡ ಪಾತ್ರವಾಗಿದೆ. ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ನಮ್ಮ ಮಹನೀಯರು, ತಜ್ಞರು ನಮ್ಮ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ದಿನದ ಟಾಕ್ಗೆ ಬಂದಿರೋದು ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾಗ್ಯ. ಈ ಶಬ್ದಗಳೊಂದಿಗೆ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಗೋಪಾಲ್ ನಾಯಕ್ನ ಸುಶಾಸನದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಕೇಳಿಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ನಾಯಕ್ ಅವರೇ. ಸರ್, ತಾವು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದೀರಿ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್ ಗೋಪಾಲ್.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Only slides maximize ಮಾಡಬೇಕಷ್ಟೇ.
Yeah, I'll do that. Is it okay now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ayyappan, for this wonderful introduction. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. I know Dr. Ayyappan for a long time. It has been a pleasure meeting him every time. The conversation has been very illuminating. I also would like to be thankful to Dr. Vidyashankar. He has, of course, many times we have interacted, and I can recall when he was a principal secretary of e-governance, we went for help in conducting a field experiment, and he was so readily helping us, cooperating in all ways. We felt very encouraged and motivated to do this. So it's pleasant to be here in this forum. Let me just try to see what we can learn about the good governance. Jayashankarji has given a wonderful talk about the concepts of good governance and also highlighted some of the key issues in good governance, including some of the innovations that the Karnataka government has done. These are very wonderful thing, and we need to be proud of it. Let me try to see where we are in terms of good governance. While doing so, I will take a layman's approach, trying to see, what a common man or a woman would think about governance in the country. So therefore, what I will do is basically try to bring in some key indicators and see what they say about our governance, and also probably highlight some areas where probably we need to improve upon. I'll just begin with what Vidyashankarji had put up, that is the principles of good governance as given by the UN. As Vidyashankarji has rightly said, these principles, there is no standard agreement on what are the principles of good governance. It varies with respect to different organizations, but it should take, of course, there is always a core sense of what good governance should mean. And these are already explained by Jayashankarji, so I will not go into details of it. But just to help us remind, good governance principles include participation. There should be a sort of free flow of opinions through legitimate and immediate organization and representatives. Rule of law is one of the most important things. That's where I think how people would, Mr. Saidapur has said, what people will feel, how good the rule of law is it impartially applied or so, and that's a very important principle. Consensus oriented, I think to a large extent, do we have our policies agreed upon by large majority of the people? Equity and inclusiveness, whether all sections of the people are included, they have the opportunity to earn their livelihood, and effectiveness and efficiency. So whether the processes and institutions will be able to produce results that meet the needs of the community. That's effectively and with efficiency. And accountability, the government institutions, private sector, civil society organization, they all should be accountable to the public and institutional stakeholders. Transparency is another most important one, which can actually reduce the corruption. And responsiveness is the other major principle of good governance. So based on these, what I will try to do is to see what are some key indicators that we can use to assess the governance, the extent of good governance in our own country, and see where some of the strengths and weaknesses lie. So while doing so, again, I may not be doing it more comprehensively, and I'd like to treat this as a more partial analysis, not to say that it is complete and so on. But again, using a common man's approach or women's approach, one can think of some areas as key to good governance assessment. So one is security. Of course, governance always starts with keeping people secure. That's important. External security, internal security is also important. In fact, even food security is very important. Law and order, right? Like enforcement of the contract, protection to property and so on. Then health and education, water and protection to the environment, opportunity for livelihood, human resource development. Again, we now, I think every government country is realizing that the human resource development is one of the most important issue in terms of looking at welfare of people. That's where the skills, the ability of people, the creativeness, the innovativeness, all of them start with, and that actually leads to better economic development and better social development. Therefore, human resource development is the key to many developmental issues. So impartiality is another key outcome that one would actually expect from good governance. So when we look at all these, I think one of the key outcome that we would see is the sort of per capita income. I think that has been a measure to assess where individual country is over a period of time, though there are certain shortcomings, and people have been saying that there are one can also look at other indicators and so on, but this is sort of a basic indicator. Now, while looking at this, what I did is I also looked at what are our neighbors doing. Neighbors, of course, not in South Asia. I want to compare so much about South Asia, but in Asian countries, which have quite similar kind of conditions with respect to population, culture, and so on, and therefore, whether we can compare with other Asian countries. So I have used Indonesia, Malaysia, South Korea, and China to make comparison between India and the other countries. And if you look at the per capita GDP in 1970 of these countries and India, and we see that, well, India and China were at the same level. So, whereas Indonesia was poorer than us, of course, Malaysia was about 3 times or a little more than 3 times better. And South Korea was about 2 times or a little more than 2 times better than us. Now, if you look at 2020, by 2020, that's almost after 50 years, what happened, we can see that while these other countries have grown faster, of course, we have also grown. I think we have, almost 20 times, increased the GDP, though there is some inflation component, but since it's a US dollar, the inflation component is not so strong, though there is this one. So we can say, let's say, about 15 times we have grown and so on. But if you look at these other countries, we see that compared to India, Indonesia's 2020 per capita GDP is 2 times, whereas they were less than what India had per capita GDP in 1970, but now they have actually doubled what our per capita GDP is. If you look at Malaysia, they are about 5 times larger. China, again, 5 times larger, say they were at the same level, so they have 5 times larger. And South Korea is 16 times bigger. So, so the per capita incomes have grown in these countries much faster than us. So that's also sort of an indication of the governance, over a period of time, how the governance has been, the effectiveness of governance, and so on, and therefore, what the outcome is. So one indicator, and in fact, you look at China today. China's position is more like a superpower, and of course, it's threatening every neighbors, including India. I think that's the that's a concern. So if we are not growing faster, this is a concern that our neighbors can also uh, have more powerful combinations, which would threaten us. So that's an external threat that one can see. Now, so if you look at sort of a trend in the per capita GDP growth, so we see that the South Korea has really started its high growth in the 80s itself, and they have grown very faster. There are two sort of dips. One is Asian crisis in 1997. The other one is the financial crisis in 2007. So except for that, you could see that very high growth rates of the economy in South Korea. We will come to why this is so later. In fact, I had an opportunity to take about 150 IAS officers to Korean Development Institute to learn about what they are doing, and the reasons for their high growth. So one of the things they were able to say is they have very great emphasis on education, and they were saying, in fact, only 0.8% of the top graduates go to the education sector, become teachers, lecturers, professors, and so on. So that's human resource contribution to economic development. So if you look at again, what are other countries? Of course, Malaysia has done well. China, more recently, especially in the last 2 decades, you will see it has grown much faster. And again, we will also see that the Chinese education and universities have come up very well in the country. Even Indonesia has done better than us. I think this is a sort of a concern that we need to look at, how we really grow faster than other countries, so that, catch up with them. I think that's catching up is what is our task is. So one thing, of course, we should say about security, external threat is, of course, no war for the last 5 decades or so. But as I said, the Chinese threat being a superpower just next to our neighbor, not necessarily very friendly, is a concern. The other things, if we look a little closely, what we also feel is that of course, our army is great. We have good defense services and external affairs and so on. I think we have done in terms of international affairs. One thing that still bothers us is the import of the armaments. I think we do spend a lot of money on importing the and that's where we need to achieve a self-reliance, and that's Atmanirbhar Bharat. That's an issue. Now let's look at the internal security kind of thing. Of course, food security is an important one, whether everybody has enough food, late and so on. Law and order, look at some of these issues. So here is a graph which talks about the annual per capita availability of food products in India. And if you look at this graph, let's say for paddy or the rice and wheat, we have done very well. In fact, in the 70s and 80s, we have done much better. Of course, even now wheat is still productivity has been higher. And we can see, in spite of the population growth, we have been able to achieve growth rate in cereal production. That is very comforting, and today we have enough of food stock with us to cater to the population, and including that, and then we have again Food Security Act, which also makes sure that nobody goes hungry. So which is a really good improvement as far as food is concerned. We can also see that many other products like milk, egg, fruits, vegetables, these are also produced in large quantities, and we have done very well over a period of time, especially milk and eggs. The revolution, blue revolution, white revolution, and so on, has really helped us in increasing the per capita availability of milk and egg, which are good protein sources. That's a concern as far as the nutrition is concerned. In fact, we can also see here that the pulses, for example, Bengal gram and red gram, they have not done very well in terms of increasing the per capita availability. And these being the major protein sources, it's only the milk and egg which is sort of helping us in overcoming, to some extent, of course, vegetables, which helps us in overcoming the protein deficiency. But overall, I would say that we have done reasonably well with respect to food security in terms of producing enough food and also distribution. The other issue is the justice. Are we able to get justice in time and so on? Of course, proper justice is, because we see that our courts do work very well, but in terms of pending of cases, I think we have huge number of cases. So that is, including all of courts, including Supreme Court, while the number of cases pending is from about 55,000 to about nearly 70,000 in 2012, and then of course it was able to reduce till 2017, but it is again increasing. I think that's a concern, and how do we reduce the pending cases is an important issue. It's not only in Supreme Court, but also in High Courts. So High Courts, the situation is a little worse, because we see that while in 2015-16 it was low, but then since then there is an increase in the number of cases. So which is almost like another 40% increase from 2010. So that's a concern for people who like to get justice. Then in subordinate case courts, definitely there are a lot more problems. So if you look at number of cases, it's from about 2.75 crores to about 4.5 crores now, which is growing steadily. And how do we reduce these and make sure that people get justice in time is an important concern, and to some extent it's a part of the, of course, governance, where of course when one wants to getting to details of why it happens, it has a number of issues and so on, but this is something I think needs to be addressed. Even in agriculture, we see a yield gap for many crops. Of course, these are a little older figure. Even I looked at more recent figures, yield gap exists. Sometimes, because these are just examples of two crops, there are many crops for which the yield gap exists, sometimes up to 40%, 50%, and so on. Because of, again, certain reasons of governance related issues. One issue is the source of information. For example, earlier we used to have a good network of extension agents by the government, but now only about 6% of the people are able to access information from the government through the extension agents. So why this? Of course, we can always say that there is ICT, IT, and so on. One can easily get information. But what farmers need is very specific information to their individual plot. We did an experiment for 3 years in 2 talukas. What we find is if we are able to provide the specific information to individual farmer, then you can increase the yield by about 30 to 50%, 60%, reduce the cost of production. You can rationalize the use of inputs, especially the chemical inputs. So therefore, you can also bring in certain amount of sustainability and increase the revenue of the farmers. So that's also, it's an important issue with respect to, of course, future food production, future agricultural health, agriculture sector health. And of course, even now, if you look at it, the farmers are still are not in a good position. They are not making good money. There are all kinds of issues there. So unless we are able to address some of these issues, we will not be able to make it sustainable. So that's something we need to. So again, related to governance, we will also see the markets of spurious pesticide is about 25% by value and 30% by volume. So annual crop loss due to spurious pesticide, again, the seeds, there are fertilizers, all of them have these market problems. And unless the government takes proper action, it will be difficult to control these problems for the farmers. So farmers, most of them being very poorly literate, are unable to judge often what is good technology, what is good input for them. And that's where they need very specific information, and that's where the need for individual based advice is required. Then we can also look at what are we doing with water. For example, agriculture uses about 85% of the total water availability, and over a period of time, the per capita availability of water is going down in India. And with that, so one should be very careful with respect to how we use water in agriculture. So efficient use, water use efficiency is most important, but we see that according to some estimates, the water use efficiency is low in most of the crops in most of the states. So that is these figures, which is greater than 1, indicates that the inefficiency in the water use in these crops and the state. The other thing is about degradation of land degradation. According to some estimates, we do have problems. There are large areas of land which are degraded because of either misuse of the water itself, usar lands and so on, or water extraction being very high. Then again, because of salty saline water coming in and so on. So that's also a problem. There are soil erosion problems and so on. So land degradation is an important issue. Again, this is also related to governance in the sense that how we take actions, in terms of policies and how they make impact on the ground. So, for example, I think if we leave the electricity free, then there is no judicious use of the power as well as the water. I think that's something which comes out very clearly from the field studies. The other issue that we need to look at is human capital index. As I said earlier, human capital is key to the development. So it highlights how current health and education outcomes shape the productivity of the next generation of workers. and India ranks 116 out of 174 countries. So that's not a very happy situation that we are in. We will also look at, if you look at the global nutrition report, so then we have greater problem. Over 190 million undernourished people are there in India. India ranks 114th out of 132 countries on under 5 years of age children in terms of stunting, and 120th out of 130 countries and under 5 years of age in terms of wasting, and 170th rank out of 185 countries on prevalence of anemia. That's also a big issue, and 50% of the women are considered to be anemic. That's a big problem in India. So if you look at the trend in the Human Development Index over a period of time, what we see is, of course, we are making progress, let's say from 0.43 to about 0.62 or so. So we have made progress in the last 30 years. But that's not enough in terms of catching up with the rest of the countries. If you look at South Korea, it's way above. It's more than 0.92 or so. Malaysia, Indonesia, China, all of them are, ahead of us. So we need to have a steeper curve. How do we really increase the slope of this curve so that we can catch up with the others who are similar to that. So human resource development is very important. If you look at, of course, the government machinery, if you look at recruitment, of course, UPSC is doing a great job. But when we come to the state level, I think there are issues, and we can see those issues from the number of court cases and so on. And of course, even the training provided is, what I would call, being involved in several training programs is insufficient to really make people, competent in delivering these services. I think these are also, there are a whole lot of issues with respect to mindset changes and so on, so that, they really understand the citizen-centric administration, and also able to take forward the innovativeness, as what Shankarji has mentioned, some of these, very good initiative. How do we take it forward? I think that's an important issue. Or even sometimes continuity of these services is very important. The other issue is a larger one, so childcare, education, training, these are very important issues, especially, if you look at the Heckman's curve, which essentially says that the return on investment is high if at the very early ages, including, of course, prenatal to early childhood to preschool to K-12 education. These are all very important years of any person, and unless we spend enough resources, we will not be able to really make progress, because these are the people who will get skills, education, awareness, and innovativeness, ideas, newer ideas, and so on, and take the country forward. And that's where I think we have problems. Because if you look at something like infant mortality, which is an indicator of how much money we really spend on early ages, pregnancy and childbirth and so on, we have done progress. I think it's from about 140 to we have been able to reduce the number of deaths to about 32 or so. But again, 27 or so. But again, we are behind these other countries. I think that's an important factor to be considered. So the slope of the curve has to actually increase even here. So that is the challenge that we have. How do you make the slope of the curve, greater, so that we can catch up with the rest of the world? So if you look at, again, same, child mortality under 5, same situation. And if you look at, let's say, where we are, Indonesia was there 10 years back, and China was there 20 years back. And, South Korea and Malaysia were there about 40 years ago. So we have so much to catch up. So 40 years of, we are lagging behind by 40 years with respect to Korea and Malaysia, whereas with China, about 20 years, we are lagging behind. And in 20 years, they will be moving forward as well. So I think that is the kind of task that we have. And of course, government has a major role to play. So similar, children mortality, 5 to 14 years as well, similar, pattern that you could see. So again, comparing these countries on a literacy rate, we can see that while we made progress, this is what we also, indicate all the time, that we have made progress and so on, which is very true. From 1980, 40% literacy to about 75% literacy in 2018. But these other countries have paid a lot more attention for education and have moved forward much earlier. Like Indonesia has achieved, let's say, 90% in 2004 itself. China has achieved it in 2000 itself. Malaysia, again, around 2000, 2003, 4, and so on. South Korea achieved 98% in 2008. Of course, it could be even before, but the data was not available. But that is the task, let's say from 74% or 75% or 76 maybe, and so on. And how do you achieve 95%, 96%? Of course, our attendance registers say that the enrollment in primary education is about 94, 95%. But, how do we really achieve literacy, of our 95% of the population, or 95, 96% of the population? So that's the challenge. And the added to that challenge is what this survey says, National Education Achievement Survey, which was done in 2017 and 2021. These are, of course, with respect to different subjects, and they have a very rigorous way of testing it, using all the rigorous methodologies to assess the achievement of students. So these are like 3rd grade, 5th grade, and 8th grade students. And we see that, of course, even the 10th grade is also there in 21. And what we see is, the score actually decreases with the higher grades, which is not very, satisfactory. We should, we should have higher scores with the higher grades, but this is actually decreasing. The other important thing that we notice is from 2017 to 2021, for the same grade, the scores have come down. That's also another major issue that we need to take account of. I think the national debate has to focus a lot more on these issues as to how do we really improve the quality of education at the primary level. As Heckman Karp says, investment in at the early ages is going to give us a lot more benefit. And if unless we focus on this, we will have problems in catching up with the rest of the countries. That we see in all these subjects, and therefore we can see that performance recorded a decline in almost all the subjects, and and also if you get mathematics scores, from 57% for 3rd grade to 44% 5th grade, 36% in class 8th, and class 10th. In fact, it has decreased further to 32%. Similarly, language score, science score also, 8th standard to 10th standard, it has decreased. And another key issue is the average performance of the school in rural areas remain significantly below. And that is also a concern because we still have large, population in the village. 60% of the population in the villages, and therefore it's important that we pay a lot more attention to the schools in rural areas. So what we did is we did a survey of 44 schools and try to understand whether there are some basic facilities are there in the school or not. So these are percentages. These are percentages of schools not having the facility out of these 44 schools, and this I think would be not much different than even if you make a larger survey. And so what it says is sorry. Let's say about 50% of the schools don't have functional toilet. Building repairs, about 48% of these schools don't have proper building. They are in, repair conditions and so on. Computer availability, functional computer in 88% of the schools, we don't have that. The internet, of course, it's not there in most of these schools, 100% of the schools, including something like compound wall. Why this is important is we have been working with some schools and so on. We find that if there is no compound wall, you can't have a toilet because people can come and use and misuse and so on. As well as you can't put up anything worthwhile, valuable things like computers and or a solar system for power generation and so on. So these are problems. So we need to have these infrastructure in order to make sure that we have, of course, curriculum and teachers training, number of teachers, absenteeism, all of them are very, very important. And at the same time, if these facilities are not there, there are also this also come in the way of education, quality of education in schools. So similarly, even as important as a playground, functional playground, 63% of the schools don't have it. And of course, the last one is basically saying that nutrition garden, of course, they not expected to have, but I'll tell you why this is important. We did an analysis of the midday meal of school. We find that except for, let's say, protein and carbohydrate, most of these other nutrients which are recommended daily dietary allowances, they are deficient in the midday meal. So whether these are all the vitamins and also the micronutrients and so on, you can see that, for example, iron, there is a deficiency of that's only 21% of the required allowance is actually met. So then no wonder why there is a anemic problem in the country. So these are important issues. So we were trying to see whether we could do, let's say, nutrition garden, which can also get into the curriculum in the school, and see whether we can actually overcome these issues. One of the problems that we find is, well, when we talk about this, with various departments, we do hear that yes, there are all schemes are there. Even nutrition garden scheme is there, and there is also compound, and there should not be, in fact, if you look at the number of schemes that we have, there should not be any deficiency in the infrastructure at all. And these are with the conversation with the government officials. But then actually getting it done, on the ground is a problem. There is, who has to approach whom, how should it be, how should they approach it, and so on. It's a problem. And in fact, we are trying to do some work in this area, and we see, the governance problems very clearly in these areas. Going forward, if you look at, let's say, higher education, we know that except for very few institutions of higher education in India, most of the universities don't figure out in the world top ranking. And that's why we also see almost about 5 lakh students going abroad for university education. So it's a huge, of course, outflow of money there, though we are quite capable of actually delivering that service within India itself. So that's an issue. And related to that is, the intellectual property that has been created. So one measure is the number of patents filed, in terms of patents, trademarks, and industrial design. Again, I sort of compared these numbers with the same set of countries that I had mentioned earlier. And again, just to make the comparison much more clear, I have also put this population figures because the patent should also be with respect to population. So it's about 140 crores in India, 141 crores in China as of 2021, and South Korea has only 5 crores. Malaysia has only 3 crores, and Indonesia has 27 crores. Now, if you look at these, the patents or the intellectual property generated by these countries, and we compare it with, let's say, India. So India is, comparatively has very low number of patents compared to even, 5 crore population of South Korea. They are several times more patents compared to, in India, where there are 28 times the South Korea's population. Whereas China has done very well. We can see that increasingly from 2012 to 2021, they have done very well with respect to number of patents filed. So again, if you look at trademarks, similar patterns that we can see, China has done very well, and South Korea has done very well, especially if you take into account their population size. And India is yet to sort of catch up. Of course, we are increasing the numbers, but they are nowhere in terms of the proportion of the population. Similarly, of course, the industrial design, which is a technology theater, again, we see the same thing. India is not doing very well compared to, let's say, South Korea or China. So these are all, again, it talks about the quality of education, quality of higher education in the higher education institutions, and many of them also flow from the primary, secondary education. You can't just build a top level education without the primary, secondary education, good primary, secondary education. I think that's where I think we have issues. So if we look at then what is the budget allocation for education? So we see that, well, in 2014-15, it was 6%, which is generally considered as sort of required. And since then, it has actually gone down. So, we really have not been allocating enough resources for education, which would be, helpful in improving the quality of education in the country. The other aspect of livelihood issues and businesses, creating employment and so on is ease of doing business. And one can look at the X, and we see that, of course, India is done better than Indonesia. Of course, it moved from 52 to 71, which is good. Higher the score, it's better. But we are again below Malaysia or South Korea, which has 84, and even China, which has about 78. So they are also, of course, which is a sort of a more direct implications of governance operations. So this is the corruption index, of course, or we can call as transparency index. So if you look at India, which is this black line, which essentially says that over a period of time we have done well with respect to transparency, as of course Vijay Shankarji was talking about several initiatives and so on. But we know if we want to compare it with the South Korea and so on, we still have a long way to go. China is also, of course, similar on a similar line, maybe slightly better, but South Korea is really well. Needs to see how we can achieve such a growth in the transparency and what all needs to be done. Of course, it's not so difficult to find out. In fact, a lot of times when you attend meetings, we tend to discuss the same thing which we discussed about 20 years back and so on. So, but I think that is an issue that we need to really address. Now, usage of funds, I think we have been quite efficient in tax collection, again, using IT and so on. I think we have done well, but we are not sure of the funds utilization. There are good policies, many good policies have been there with respect to food security, with respect to many other operations, whether it's a business, markets, and so on, including information, transparency, RTIs, Aadhaar, and so on. I think there are many good policies are there. But in many other policies, implementation has been poor, especially in the social sectors. Education and health is definitely, even agriculture, is needs definitely a lot more attention in terms of improving the governance. So in conclusion, what we can say is we have achieved significant progress in some areas, or even can say in many areas, especially food is an important area that we have. Technology we have been fairly good, especially softwares and so on. We have done wonderful policy statements, policy initiatives have been very good. I think major issue is in implementation. And of course, we need greater focus on human resource development. I think that is, though there are many schemes, I think even Sarva Siksha Abhiyanam and PM Poshan nutrition, this one and so on. But still, I think the implementation has been a problem. Yes, and therefore, I think a lot more emphasis needs to be done in human resource development, citizen-centric administration, governance. In fact, again, Sakala and other things in Karnataka has done well, but I think taking it forward is what is important. Does it really happen? Within certain deadline, is it really delivered? If not, whether it's really, if people are penalized and so on, is really a question that needs to be answered. And of course, I think greater focus on sustainability, especially water, soil, and so on. How do we use it? These resources more judiciously is a challenge that we need to address, as early as possible in order to make sure that, we have a healthy growth and sustainable development in the future. So I'll stop at this. So again, I would like to thank Dr. Ayyappan and KSTA for giving me this opportunity. But I will be happy to take questions. Not sure I will be able to answer all questions, but let me try. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor Gopal Naik, for this illuminating lecture. You had touched on all segments of economy and brought out a comparative status of the country with vis-a-vis the countries closer, very close to us. So thank you very much for this talk. Now, as Professor Naik said, the talk is open to the audience for questions, comments, suggestions, and so on. Thank you. Any comments from our colleagues who are viewing this talk? Professor Shri Vidya Shankarji, you have anything to say? Professor Saidapur?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, I want to record my great appreciation for this very holistic talk. We got glimpses of so many parameters and issues related to our country. It was a wonderful talk. I just want to add, I wish Sri Naik also considers adding one more figure, a graph, or whatever you call it, that concerns education field. Now, every year, lot of students are going abroad for higher studies under some program. I don't know, it is the LDP or something. I forget that. And billions of rupees or what dollars or whatever we are losing. So why this is happening? It's happening because they are going for better studies, higher studies abroad. And since we lose foreign exchange to the tune of billions of dollars, it is also a cause for concern, and it's kind of wake-up call for us to improve our own higher education standards on par with the global standards. So my only suggestion is that I would have loved to see the graph showing in the last, say, 20-25 years, how we are steadily spending more and more money on this, India's money. That's all, nothing more.
Thank you. Thank you. I think maybe in the next talk or so, I will include it. Your suggestion is well taken.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did look at it. It's about currently it's about 5 lakhs, but I think would have been nice to see the
No, sir,
trend.
much more than that. Now,
Okay.
offhand, I cannot remember the figures, but it will be definitely in billions or millions,
No,
whatever.
in terms of rupees, no, these are numbers I'm talking about. 5 lakh.
Oh, number, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think some estimates gave me a figure of $85 billion being.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But not now. I think by another 2-3 years or so. I think that's what they estimate. I remember
Yeah.
reading
If
it.
we know the pattern, it would be wonderful. I mean, you have added so many. One more graph. That's all.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Shri Vidyashankarji, you want to say something?
No, it's a 360-degree presentation, absolutely covering, every sector of the economy, no doubt about it. But I would definitely like to see, comparing India with other countries is very good, no doubt about it, because it's very revealing on where we were, say, about 22 decades ago and where we are today. But one comparison of states, within the country will also be helpful. But I'm sure Professor Gopal Naik has a lot of information on this, because of paucity of time he couldn't incorporate the same. But it will be very equally revealing to us as to where the different states stand on all the parameters that he covered. But certainly a super 360-degree presentation from Professor Gopal Naik.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate your suggestion. I think we should also look at, I think the government of India has already started this governance initiative. I just looked at their website. They do indicate which are better governed and which are not so well governed states. But I think I couldn't find more details in terms of numbers and what parameters they are falling behind and so on. But that's a very important one, so that it gives like the public affairs centers work. It certainly gives a lot more input for individual government, individual state governments, individual departments on what parameter they have to improve upon, and that would be a good input. And yes, I probably should have had a little bit more input on that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment, and thanks, Professor Naik, for the response. Any other comments, suggestions at this stage?
Myself, Hemant Kumar, sir, Executive Secretary, KCST.
Yeah. Shri Hemant Kumarji, please.
See, I think We have been conducting this kind of webinars and workshops on good governance. And basically, we would like to improve on our governance and improve on our work culture. So there are something which we plan to do and we propose to do, like good governance in our own sector, in our own domain. Good governance, my own council, and what could be done to better the governance structure within ourselves, like it could be technical education, it could be state S&T council, it could be KST, it could be anything. And we will have a set of parameters of good governance and a time period and short, medium, long, and achieve it and show that good governance is part of also all individuals and organizations, part of the culture. That's why I joined this workshop, because because we are pondering this for quite some time. Like in good governance, we talk about transparency, corruption, so on and so forth, like IPR, I mean, publications, it could be anything. But what are the parameters to be judged? And we need to have some sort of a record of it so that we adopt, adhere, and follow it. So that I think maybe we would like to hear that as well, so that I can improve myself, not just myself, my council, the organization where I work. And it's important for all the government organizations as well, because otherwise people, I mean, last time I went to a few things, they talk about good governance and we need some action plan as well. That's only my input. That's all. That's not a question. It's my personal opinion. I mean, yeah, it's a wonderful to listen to experts, our former secretary and professor. I think it's wonderful to be here today. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Shri Hemant Kumarji, for your comments. Any other suggestions, comments? So thank you very much, Professor Gopal Naik. No words to thank you from your years of experience at the IIM and earlier. Always looking at policies at state level, central level, and incorporating the global good practices. You have been pioneering several causes of good governance at the institution and in public. And we are grateful that you came in today and gave us this wonderful talk. As I said earlier, these talks would go on the YouTube. There'll be a large number of viewers, not only the people of belonging to the KSTA family, but public. So I'm sure we'll get a lot of responses. So thank you so much. And of course, there'll be a formal vote of thanks. But ಇಬ್ಬರು ನಮ್ಮ ತಜ್ಞರು, ಇಬ್ಬರು ಮಹನೀಯರು, ಒಬ್ರು ಸರ್ಕಾರದಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದವರು, ಇನ್ನೊಬ್ರು ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ನಲ್ಲಿರೋರು. ನೀವಿಬ್ರು ಬಂದು ಇವತ್ತು ಸುಶಾಸನದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಆಯಾಮಗಳನ್ನ ನೀವು ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ಸುಶಾಸನದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ತಂದಿಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಿ. ಇಂಥ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂಬಲ್ ಸೆಷನ್ ವಾಸ್ ವೆರಿ a big boost to everyone who are listening to this. And from the KSTA, we feel that we have done our small little service that we could be doing, and a little commemoration that we could be doing for the Good Governance Month. So these very enlightening talks by Shri M.N. Vidyashankar ji and Professor Gopal Naik. So immense thanks to you. And now I would request our colleague, CEO of the Academy, Dr. A.M. Ramesh, for his words. Dr. Ramesh, please.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm very, very thankful to both the speakers. Many of the things that they told are really a take-home message for us. First of all, I would like to thank Sri M.N. Vidyashankar sir, who has delivered a very scholarly and enlightening talk on good governance concepts and applications. In fact, sir's presentation was very lucid, and he gave example of Estonian AI-based virtual assistants. It was really very inspiring. Hope Karnataka will emulate the success of Estonia in coming days. And citizen-oriented services and success stories like paperless office, Sakal, Bangalore One, Karnataka One, etc. Sir explained. And many of these initiatives were initiated by Vidyashankar sir himself. On behalf of, in fact, it is a matter of privilege that Vidyashankar sir accepted our invitation. KSTA owes a lot for his support and encouragement. on this occasion. And we are very, very immensely thankful to you for your presence and wonderful presentation, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Namaskara. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a privilege for me to be a part of this event. Namaskara.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Namaskar.
Second talk was by Professor Gopal Nayak, Professor of Economics, IIM. Sir talked about good governance. Where are we? Sir, in fact, his talk touched many facets of economy with many examples: food security, use of water, degradation of land, human capital index, global nutrition, etc. In fact, it was also a very enlightening and informative talk, sir. On behalf of KSTA and all the audience present both on Cisco WebEx and YouTube, we are very, very grateful to you, sir, for your time and wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I am also thankful to our Honorable Chairman for helping us in organizing this wonderful web talks. I am thankful to our esteemed member, Professor Saidapur sir, and also Hemant Kumar ji, my good colleague, and all the participants who have joined for this web talk. We look forward to your support and encouragement in future as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.
ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರಗಳು. ತುಂಬಾ ಧನ್ಯವಾದ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Namaskara.
ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ.